Was she ignoring them out of fear, or was she just waiting for the perfect moment to strike back? The yellow school bus lurched to a stop in front of Westbridge High, its brakes hissing as students poured out, laughing and shoving. No one noticed the last girl to step down. She adjusted her backpack, glancing at the towering brick building. Another school. Another set of unspoken rules. Keep your head down. Stay invisible. Naomi Ellis intended to do exactly that today as she walked through the entrance. She felt the weight of unseen eyes. It was always the same when you were the new girl. But at a place like this, where most faces were pale and privileged, it wasn't just curiosity. It was judgment. Would she be loud? Would she be aggressive? Would she be one of those girls? Naomi ignored them, turning toward her locker. That's when she saw them, Madeline Pierce. Tall, blonde, effortlessly poised. Not just popular, she was in control. The kind of girl who decided who mattered. Flanking her were her loyal followers, Brianna and Lacey, always a step behind. And then there were the boys, Caleb Pierce, Madeline's older brother, the golden boy of Westbridge, smirking like he owned the place. Next to him stood Jordan Vasquez, all sharp edges and cocky grins, loving the sound of his own voice. Naomi knew their type. She had no interest in getting involved. She turned to her locker, twirling the dial. But she could feel it, Madeline's gaze, assessing. The first class passed uneventfully, but the whispers continued. Someone brushed past her in the hallway, muttering, "She's from Dallas. Think she's one of those tough girls." Naomi didn't react. At lunch, she sat alone in the corner of the cafeteria. The room buzzed with conversation, but she ignored it, until the laughter shifted. Sharper now. Targeted. Well, look at this. Madeline's voice was smooth, amused. Naomi didn't look up. "Oh, is the new girl shy?" Brianna teased. "I think she's just stuck up." Lacey added that a few students snickered. Naomi kept eating. Then Jordan's voice cut in. "Maybe she doesn't speak English." Laughter rippled around them. Caleb leaned against her table, smirking. Or maybe he drawled, "She's just slow." More laughter. Madeline watched, waiting for the reaction she wanted. If the new girl ignored them, it meant she wasn't afraid. And that was unacceptable. She flicked Naomi's juice cup. The liquid spilled across her tray. Silence. Naomi exhaled, wiped her hands, and stood. Without a word, she picked up her tray, walked to the trash, and dumped it. Laughter erupted, but it wasn't as loud this time. It was forced, uneasy. Because when Naomi looked at Madeline before walking away, there was something in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, just patience. For the first time in a long time, Madeline Pierce felt something unfamiliar, that uncertainty. WY the next class. The entire school was whispering about IT, that IT should have been a victory for Madeline. Another girl humiliated into submission. But something fell off. Naomi hadn't looked embarrassed. She hadn't even looked angry. She had expected it. Madeline sat in class, barely listening, drumming her nails against her desk. Brianna leaned in. That was weird, wasn't it? Weird how? Brianna hesitated. She didn't react. Most people at least look mad or scared. She just didn't care. "She's faking," Madeline said. "She wants to look tough." But Brianna didn't look convinced, and Madeline knew the cafeteria had felt it. Instead of laughing at Naomi, people were curious about her. Madeline clenched her jaw. That wasn't how this worked. Across the room, Caleb stretched lazily, smirking. "You look stressed, sis." "Shut up." Caleb chuckled. "Relax. If she wants to act tough, we'll push harder. She'll break." Jordan grinned. "Yeah. Maybe we turn up the heat a little." Madeline let their words settle. Maybe they were right. BY the next morning, everything felt different. The way students watched Naomi. The way the air buzzed with something new. She wasn't just a new girl anymore. She was a challenge. She moved with the same calm, unbothered energy. But that didn't stop the whispers. She really just walked away? She didn't even look mad. What if she's actually dangerous? Rumors spread fast. And Madeline Pierce and her crew were about to test her again. That IT started small, that I end gym class. Brianna and Lacey accidentally bumped into her. An elbow here, a shove there. Naomi didn't react. During basketball, Caleb stole the ball every time she got it, knocking into her just hard enough to make her stumble. Jordan laughed. "Damn, new girl. Do you even know how to play?" Naomi ignored them. Madeline watched, arms crossed, waiting for something to crack. But Naomi took every shove, every insult, every unfair move, without flinching that if anything, she looked bored. This wasn't submission. It was control, and that made Madeline Pierce furious. Here's the rewritten section with the correct names, keeping it at around 500 words while maintaining the tension and flow. By the time lunch rolled around, Madeline was done playing games. Naomi had barely picked up her tray when she felt it, a sudden, heavy shove from behind. She stumbled forward, her tray tipping, food splattering across the floor. The cafeteria went silent. For a moment, there was nothing but the echo of the tray hitting the ground. Then, the laughter started. Madeline's smirk widened as she stepped forward, standing over Naomi like she'd already won. "Oh no," she said mockingly. "Did the poor, little new girl drop her lunch? That's so sad." Brianna and Lacey laughed. Caleb leaned against a nearby table, arms crossed, a smirk on his face. Jordan had his phone out, recording. Around them, other students did the same, cameras flashing. This was the moment Naomi was supposed to break. Madeline leaned in. "What's wrong? Gonna cry? Maybe you should run home to mommy." More laughter. More cameras. But Naomi didn't move. She stood completely still, her fists clenched at her sides, her breathing steady. Then slowly, she looked up at Madeline and smiled that it was small, almost imperceptible. But Madeline saw it. For the first time, something cold crawled up her spine. The cafeteria was still laughing, but suddenly, she wasn't sure why. It didn't feel like she was winning anymore. Naomi bent down, calmly picked up her tray, and without breaking eye contact, turned and walked away. Laughter exploded again, but this time, it was different. Madeline could hear the confusion beneath it, the whispering. That wasn't fear in Naomi's eyes. It wasn't anger. It was something else entirely. And for the first time in her life, Madeline Pierce felt doubt. That night, Naomi sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched plate of food in front of her. Her father, Darius Ellis, poured himself a cup of coffee, his sharp eyes flicking toward her every so often. He didn't need to ask if something was wrong. He could see it. Setting his cup down, he leaned against the counter. "All right," he said steadily. "Tell me." Naomi exhaled. "I don't want to fight," she said finally. Darius studied her. "And yet, you're thinking about it." She clenched her fists. "I don't want to fight," she repeated, voice tighter this time. "But I don't want to be that girl either. The one who just takes it. The one they think they can push around." Darius took a slow sip of coffee. "You walked away because you didn't want to hurt them." Naomi looked up sharply. "I trained you to defend yourself, not to be a weapon," he said. "But I also trained you to recognize when people like that won't stop until you give them a reason to." She swallowed. She knew that truth all too well. She had spent years avoiding these moments, staying quiet, keeping her head down. But people like Madeline never understood silence. When the final bell rang the next day, Naomi didn't hesitate. She walked to the back of the school. They were already waiting. "The new girl is threatening me," Madeline said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Naomi Ellis didn't move. "Not a threat," she said calmly. "A warning." Madeline hated that. Hated that Naomi wasn't scared. Hated that, for the first time, she felt her own heartbeat pick up. Hated that she was starting to wonder if she had made a mistake. Sensing the tension, Caleb Pierce stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "You done talking, or are we starting this?" Madeline exhaled sharply. Naomi wasn't afraid of her. Fine. She'd let Caleb handle it. Smirking, she tilted her head toward Naomi. "You heard her, Caleb. She thinks we don't want to do this. Why don't you show her how wrong she is?" Caleb grinned, rolling his shoulders. He towered over Naomi, built like a wall. "Go easy on you," he mocked. Naomi didn't answer. Caleb swung first. The moment his fist moved, Naomi wasn't there anymore. She stepped inside his reach, caught his wrist, and in one fluid motion, twisted and used his own weight against him. Caleb's world flipped. 1 second, he was throwing a punch. The next, his back slammed against the pavement. The breath rushed from his lungs. The crowd gasped. Madeline's stomach dropped. Caleb lay on the ground, coughing, his face twisted in confusion and fear. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't possible. Naomi stepped back, her expression unreadable. I warned you. Jordan Vasquez hesitated. His bravado wavered. But he had a reputation to protect. He couldn't back down, not in front of everyone. She got lucky, he spat, charging forward. Naomi barely moved. At the last second, she sidestepped, caught his wrist mid-strike, spun behind him, and locked his arm back so fast he let out a strangled yell. Then she let go. Jordan stumbled forward, clutching his arm, staring at her like she wasn't even human. Silence. For the first time in her life, Madeline Pierce had nothing to say. The same crowd that had gathered to watch Naomi be humiliated now stood frozen, their wide-eyed disbelief mirroring Madeline's own. Caleb was still on the ground, struggling to catch his breath. Jordan was stiff, cradling his arm. Brianna and Lacey, Madeline's ever-loyal shadows, were eerily quiet, their usual smirks wiped clean. And Naomi? She hadn't moved. She hadn't celebrated, hadn't gloated, hadn't even looked satisfied. She just stood there, steady, like none of this had taken any real effort. Madeline's nails dug into her palm. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. There had to be something, some way to turn this around. She was still Madeline Pierce. She still made the rules at Westbridge High. Then Naomi spoke, and the words hit like a slap. You thought this was about power. Her voice was quiet, but somehow stronger than the murmurs surrounding them. But the truth is, you were never strong to begin with. Madeline felt those words burn through her, cutting deeper than any insult ever had. And then Naomi turned away, just like that. She turned, dismissing Madeline in front of everyone. Madeline snapped. She didn't think, didn't plan, just acted, lunging forward, reaching for Naomi's hair in a blind, desperate attempt to take back control that a mistake, before Madeline could even register what happened. Her wrist was caught midair, trapped in an iron grip. Naomi didn't even turn her head. She just held Madeline's arm there, effortlessly. Completely still, Madeline froze. Finally, Naomi turned, her gaze steady, unwavering. She leaned in just enough for only Madeline to hear. You don't have any power over me, she said, voice like steel. And you never will. Then she let go. Madeline stumbled back, her heart hammering against her ribs. Naomi didn't wait for a response. She just walked away. This time, the silence wasn't just shock.